Hi, this is Lawrence Fleckenbill. You are listening to TV Confidential.
I'm Wink Martindale, and this is Tic Tac Dough. At the end of our regular season a number of weeks ago, we were in the middle of one of the most suspense-filled winning streaks in the history of TV game shows.
Ed Robertson welcoming you back to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television. This week is a radio talk show about Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale, the legendary game show host who passed away Tuesday, April 15th at the age of 91. Later on this hour, we will hear from our friend Randy West. Randy West, longtime television announcer. Randy worked with Wink Martindale on 5 different game shows for the Family Channel, including Trivial Pursuit. He'll share a few memories of working with Wink, plus he'll tell us what he believes are the 2 reasons behind Wink's long success as a game show host. We'll hear from Randy West later on in this hour. In the meantime, with us right now via Zoom is our friend Steve Beverly. Steve Beverly, recently retired professor of broadcast journalism at Union University in Jackson, Tennessee. Jackson, Tennessee, the birthplace of Wink Martindale. Steve Beverly, also the host of Steve Beverly's TV Classic. Steve recently rebroadcast Wink Comes Home, a 90-minute special that he hosted in November 2007 at Union University, in which Wink discussed his life and career with Steve and took questions from the studio audience. Steve recently rebroadcast Wink Comes Home as part of Steve Beverly's TV Classics. You can enjoy that episode on demand on your smartphone, tablet, or laptop by going to eplusTV6.com, eplusTV6.com, or if you have the PBS app, typing in West TN PBS, West TN PBS, go to the drop-down menu and look up Steve Beverly's TV Classics. Before we went to break, Steve and I were talking about the longevity of Tic Tac Dough and how the success of that show became synonymous with Wink Martindale.
Tic Tac Dough, this is one of the keys that I think you have to look at, and Wink himself has said this many times, is that it was the total combination of the right place at the right time. What a lot of people forget, of course, this was a show that was tarnished by the quiz scandals in the 1950s because in the grand jury investigations into the quiz scandals, Tic Tac Dough, which of course was a Jack Barry, Dan Enright production, was fixed. They milked the show just like professional wrestling, and it was just like happened with 21 and a lot of the other shows that were the big money shows in that era. But this had to be clean, obviously, because you've got somebody that's the equivalent of an FBI guy that's representing the network that ponders over you can't, if you're a contestant today, you can't even go to the restroom without having somebody from the network or the syndicator that accompanies you to be sure you're not trying to go through the paper towels in the in the bathroom and trying to get the answers like Eddie Haskell did on Leave It to Beaver. But what you have to realize, though, is that Tic Tac Dough, the 70s version, had already been sold to local stations to premiere in the fall of 1977. And all of a sudden, you look up and CBS decided to get rid of Pass the Buck, which was a Bill Cullen game show that was not doing well at all. And so they decided in the summer, ahead of the premiere in syndication, CBS decided to pick up Tic Tac Dough for the morning. So here you got Wink in the morning, and he's doing 2 different versions of the show. He's having to do 10 shows a week. But think about this, is that this is a show that's got this kind of a brand name, and it has been sold to general managers across the country. And then you think about this. It bombed.
Yeah.
It laid a big egg, and the station managers were calling up Jack Barry and Dan Enright and King World, which was the distributor, and they said, "What kind of a clinker have you sold us here?" Well, they had to go forward with the game, and it had been scheduled in a choice in many stations across the country between 6:30 and 8 o'clock, depending on what time zone you were in. And it did so-so ratings the first year, but enough to get it renewed. And then all of a sudden you get a contestant like Thom McKee this, you're looking at a guy that, and he's got a beautiful wife who's expecting a child, their first child, who is in the audience, and he's dressed in all of his military attire, and he goes on a tear and wins 43 games over 46 days. At that point in time, set was the then record of $312,700 in cash and prizes, including 8 cars. And the country just became mesmerized. I mean, it was a Ken Jennings type of situation that happened on Jeopardy. Well, as has been described by Wink and by Thom McKee, you had the combination of the perfect contestant and the accoutrements being they cut the shot in the audience of the wife. He just seemingly cannot miss. People love him because he's a serviceman. And then you've got the perfect host for that particular show. There are many terrific hosts, but they will tell you that they may have lacked onto a clicker during the course of their careers. But Tic Tac Dough was the perfect show for Wink Martindale. And then when you get a winning streak like that, America latched on. And so it became the longest running success of his career. And it was huge. For 2 years, it was the #1 weeknight syndicated show in the country. And so you look at all of that. Wink if he were still with us, he would tell you again, it was a case of the right place, the right time, the right contestant, and the right game. And sometimes it all lines up into place, and it did then.
You mentioned Jack Barry and Dan Enright. If I remember correctly, Wink, specifically in his book, Winking at Life, Wink talks about, he mentions Dan Enright by name, and he said he learned more about how to host a show, how to manage a show from Dan Enright than any of the other people he'd worked with. And again, this was not his first rodeo hosting a show, but that also speaks to who he was as a person. He was always, even though he was very accomplished, he was always willing to learn, to improve himself, to become the best Wink possible.
Yeah, and we can go back well before that to the 60s when Wink was tapped to do a show called How's Your Mother-in-Law that Chuck Barris produced. And, Chuck got that show because of the fact he'd had huge success for ABC with the dating game and the newlywed game, and of course the less than successful family game. Mm-hmm. But Chuck seemingly was on a roll, and some of his shows, were exploitative. And this was one that was designed to be that because of the fact that it was, in a sense, insulting mothers-in-law by the questions that were involved with that. And it was one of the key failures that occurred in Wink's career that really was through no fault of his own. And we talked about that. In fact, we talk about that in Wink Comes Home. And one of the things that he said was that Chuck Barris and he recognized about 6 weeks into the show that it wasn't going to work, because if you are insulting a mother-in-law, you are insulting someone's mother.
Yeah.
And you can't do that, and you can't make fun and games out of that kind of insult in a television game show. And so it was gone in 13, and it was just, it was a terrible show. And unfortunately, sometimes a host gets labeled by being on a bad show that does not work, and sometimes they're afraid to take a chance with him again. But Wink never gave up. And even though he had others like Can You Top This that was not a success, and bringing back an old radio show into television, it was not a success. And he would go down the line and tell you about these. Words and Music was one that just, it was he called it a clinker. But I mean, that's Wink's own words. Yeah. But then when he got Gambit, it was proof positive that you match the right show to his talents, it has a chance, particularly if it's in the right time slot. So he had that, and then went immediately from Gambit to Tic Tac Dough. And this is a guy that if you put all of that together, he ended up with 13 consecutive years that he had some kind of a hit game show on television, and he'll take it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. Steve Beverly hosts Wink Comes Home, a audience participation show originally taped in November 2007, featuring Wink Martindale, reflecting on his life and career and taking questions from the studio audience that day. You can enjoy Wink Comes Home as part of Steve Beverly's TV Classics on demand, e+tv6.com, or if you have the PBS app, download the PBS app, look up West TN PBS, and you can check and scroll down to the Steve Beverly, to the menu that will take you to Steve Beverly's TV Classics. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay Area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
One more item. If you're starting a company, particularly one that is in an emerging market, you know that averting any sort of legal dispute is crucial to your business plan. Our friends at Tectonic Law offer an array of services that can help you avoid and preempt future litigation while also developing and protecting your intellectual property and intangible assets. Tectonic Law serves the needs of a host of emerging industries throughout California and beyond, including industrial designers, beverage makers, artists, farmers, retail stores, health practitioners, wellness experts, cosmetics manufacturers, nonprofit organizations, innovators in sustainable practices, and libraries. Go to tectoniclaw.com to learn more about how Tectonic Law can help your business thrive. tectoniclaw.com. Rock solid representation for groundbreaking industries.
Hi, everybody. This is Ruta Lee, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
It's time for What's This Song? And here's the star of the show, Wink Martindale.
Thank you very much. That's enough. That's enough. Thank you. Thank you. And good morning, everybody. What's this song? Maria. Beautiful song from a beautiful Broadway production, West Side Story. It starred the equally beautiful Miss Carol Lawrence.
Is there anything else about Wink Martindale, the person, Wink Martindale, the professional, that you'd like to say that I haven't already asked you, Steve?
I think one of the key things that I would say, because of living in Jackson, Tennessee myself for 34 and a half years, is that Wink never lost his roots. He did not get to come home often because he was so successful out in Los Angeles. But when he did, he had quality time with his relatives. And he came back. One of the reasons we did the show, he had promised me that if he was ever in town for, several days consecutively, that he would do a show with me live. And so he was selected by the first college that he attended, Lambeth University, for its Distinguished Alumnus Award. And because of that, he was going to be coming home for a period of about 5 days. And so we worked out a time that he would, and he was glad to do it. So that's the kind of thing that I think you learn. And he got many questions in Wink Comes Home about what life was like in Jackson when he grew up. And his memory was just impeccable. But I think that, this is one of the things that I think the best of the MCs, you can have one who maybe skirts it from time to time, but most of the best MCs that we have, particularly those that grew up in the Midwest or in the South, they hold on to that sense of tradition, their roots. They treat people as they would hope to be treated. And as I say, not everybody's that way in the profession, but Wink was certainly one of those. Tom Kennedy, Jack Nars, they were both from that fraternity of people that came from a part of the country. The Nars brothers came from Kentucky and Wink from Tennessee. They never forgot who they were. And it was to them, that they obviously fulfilled great career ambitions beyond their wildest expectations. But at the same time, they remembered where they came from. And I think that is one of the exclamation points that you put on the life of Wink Martindale.
They remembered where they came from, and that's one of the reasons why he and Tom Kennedy and Jack Nars and the other greats remain beloved up until the very end, because they connected with people and they never forgot that. Steve, we got a few minutes left before we let you go, and as long as we have you on the Zoom call. As it happens, the new version of Tic Tac Dough happened to premiere the day before Wink died. I watched a few minutes. I hope it gets better. The host seemed very stiff, and I don't understand why they don't have a podium for her.
That's the thing today, is that hosts, they look on this as if it's almost like we're seeing in news now, where you have more and more of the newscasters standing by a big wall monitor, rather than being behind a desk. Every 20 years or so, somebody wants to reinvent the wheel because they think it's necessary to do that. And that's what we're seeing now, is a lot of MCs that they say, we don't want them encumbered by a desk or whatever. I don't think that means 10 cents to the audience whatsoever. I really don't. But that's the way it is right now. And I think there are some hosts, particularly some that are younger, that could probably help them in a way, rather than having to feel that they are suddenly out there without something to hang on to. But, I hope that over the 65 shows that have been done, that we will see the show get better. It is a tough show to do, though, because you are quickly having to move from one category to another, and it takes time to really get it. Most game shows have a rhythm and a tempo.
Yeah.
And people who are not experienced at that kind of format, they need time to be able to develop that rhythm and tempo. And I think if that can happen, it has a chance, because the game is a good game. And I don't think it will ever be anything but that. It's simple because it's a game we all started learning to play when we were kids, except we didn't have questions and answers associated. Yeah. But, I hope it does get better, but it's going to take time for her to get a tempo with that.
Yeah, and you know this from both sides of the microphone, Steve. You want a format that plays to the strength of the host. And from what I've seen, and again, you can't judge a show off one. You can't judge a 65 episode show off of one episode. But she looked very stiff. And even when they did a wide shot of her and the two contestants, it looked uncomfortable to watch. And so I just hope that down the road, maybe they decide to give her a podium and give her something to, because I think that would play to her strength, which is one of the reasons why she was tapped to host the show to begin with. So create a format that works for her.
Yeah, I think if they want to have her walk over and talk to the contestants and do that, that's fine. But to not have something that at least it's not, and I don't see it as a barrier. I just see it. That's the argument that I keep hearing these consultants who want to recommend that change TV news, is they keep saying, well, it's always been a barrier that you have between the audience and the anchors. And I say, no, I said, it is a natural format and a natural set of furniture and accoutrements that you would have that the audience is very comfortable with. Yes. And I said, yeah, if you want to bring them out and let them stand next to the monitor for maybe a story or two, that's okay. But I said, it looks as though you are doing a Ziegfeld production.
Yeah.
When you take the desk away and you say, now this is more like we like to have it. I said the net, and I told one of these guys, I said, the networks still haven't gotten rid of that in the evening newscasts. And I don't see why you think that this is a problem in local news. But that is one of the things I've been noticing about the newer cable game shows in particular, is that desk, they just seem like they have an aversion to it now. And I don't think on Q&A shows that's necessarily a good thing.
Well, I'm showing my age, but I agree. I think, look, when I watch local news or even when I watch the network news, I think it looks weird when the anchor just stands in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't work for me, and I don't think I'm alone there, So, but eplustv6.com, PBS app, West TN PBS, Steve Beverly's TV Classic. Steve, always a pleasure to chat with you. I look forward to our next conversation.
My pleasure, Ed.
Television announcer Randy West worked with Wink Martindale on at least 5 different game shows for the Family Channel, including Trivial Pursuit. Randy West will share a few memories of Wink Martindale as we continue our tribute to the game show legend here on TV Confidential.
Who needs a vacation? Are you ready for an unforgettable getaway? Start packing your bags because Branson, Missouri, the vacation and entertainment capital of the U.S., is calling your name. For just $99 per person, here's what you get. A full 3-day, 2-night stay in a luxury resort hotel. A delicious full breakfast buffet every morning you're here. And when you call right now, free show tickets worth up to $100. That's right, free show tickets to an award-winning show on us. You don't have to leave the country for an amazing vacation. You can drive or fly to Branson and have an incredible time. Whether you bring in the whole family or just planning a romantic escape, this trip is built for you. We guarantee you'll love Branson. This is not a timeshare. It's just an unbeatable vacation deal for only $99 per person. You book now, you can use your tickets anytime this year. You don't even need to know your travel dates to lock in the special price. Hurry, because this offer won't last long. Call our Branson vacation experts today.
800-435-1887. 800-435-1887. 800-435-1887. That's 800-435-1887.